Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, and share buttons. Well, they're coming after you. No doubt about it. We're going to look at a number of stories today, and I don't think there's any other way to explain these stories other than that they're coming after you, they're coming after me, and anyone else who enjoys freedom and liberty. And the goal is nothing less than to set up global government and the mark of the beast system that we read about in Revelation chapter 13. So we're going to look at a number of stories today about what global organizations and governments intend to do to us, what they're planning to roll out, and then we're going to talk about how they're planning to roll it out, or at least how I think they're going to try to roll this out. But every indication is that's what they're going to do. So let's start with this right here. This is from Forbes from a couple of months ago. It says 2023, the year digital identities go mainstream. It says, since the pandemic, we've seen the use of digital identity evolve alongside our hybrid lifestyles as more businesses and government agencies were pushed to move interactions online rather than in person. By 2021, several countries began exploring digital vaccine passports. I don't even know if I can say that anymore. So this whole video may be taken off of certain platforms for even saying that. I don't know. Who knows? It says, for travel, given the acute need for convenient, secure confirmation of a traveler's health status. Now, given that the need, whose need? Who determined that that was needed? The governments did, right? If you were afraid to travel, maybe you shouldn't have traveled. Although not a concern anymore for most governments and individuals, and I would beg to differ because they're still pushing a lot of this stuff. It's a use case that drove home the value of digital identities more clearly to both private companies and government entities, but not to individual citizens who care about freedom and liberty. I would add that. But then this goes on to cite a number of trends that they see, one of which is the EU is now mandating digital identity. It says the European Union will mandate digital identity under EIDAS 2.0, which will go into effect in September 2023 and ensure all member states offer a digital identity wallet to citizens and businesses. According to the European Commission, at least 80% of citizens should be able to use digital ID solutions to access key public services by 2030. So guys, they want to start implementing digital IDs at the national level, but also at the global level. So this isn't just local governments we're talking about. This isn't just the European Union. At the global level, they want to implement that. I think I'm making it up. Let's look at this policy brief from the United Nations. It's titled Our Common Agenda, Policy Brief 5, a Global Digital Compact, an open, free, and secure digital future for all. Remember, and again, this is from May 2023 from the United Nations. Remember, governments, government entities, all the people behind these types of agendas, whatever they name something, there's two things that you can be absolutely certain of. Number one, the official government denial means it's coming almost immediately. Certainly in the very near future, whatever their officially government denial, if you have a suspicion they're going to do it and it's bad, it's coming. Number two, you can count on them naming programs the exact opposite of whatever they are, such as the Inflation Reduction Act, right? And so here we have open, free, and secure digital future for all. Guys, it's going to be the exact opposite of that. We turn to page 8 of this and we read this. It says, digital IDs linked with bank or mobile money accounts can improve the delivery of social protection coverage and serve to better each reach eligible beneficiaries. Digital technologies may help to reduce leakage, errors, and cost in the design of social protection programs. So what are they talking about? They're talking about welfare programs, the universal basic income that they're probably going to roll out. And of course, those are going to come with strings attached, like social credit scores. It means your freedom and liberty is gone. And so they give these fancy names. Again, it sounds wonderful. The social protection coverage. Again, remember, it's the exact opposite of whatever they name it. It's going to be terrible for those involved in it. But the key is they don't want just digital IDs on a national scale. They also want them on a global scale, and they want them connected to your bank accounts. So are we seeing where this is going? We read in Revelation 13 about this mark of the beast system that enables the Antichrist and the false prophet to be able to cut off, to be able to control who can buy or sell, which means they could stop you from being able to buy or sell. So here we're talking about a digital ID that they want to connect to every person in their bank account. What could possibly go wrong, right? Of course, we don't intend to use this for evil, they'll say, and we know how that goes. So there's more. Let's read this right here. This one says, somebody named Mike Adams. I'm not familiar with Mike Adams, but this is right on the money. It says, worse than CBDCs, globalists publish plan for worldwide financial enslavement under unified ledger. And this is a proposed Bank of International Settlements program. Talked about this some in the past. He says, if you thought central bank digital currency plans sounded dystopian, just wait until you read the new unified ledger agenda released by the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS, known as the Bank of Central Banks. Because, guys, this is going to go much deeper than simply controlling your currency and the transaction medium you use to buy and sell. They want to control everything, what you're actually buying as well. It says the plan found at this link on bis.org is entitled Blueprint for the Future Monetary System, Improving the Old, Enabling the New. I provide a full analysis in today's Bright Broadcast News video below. This is Mike Evans. I'm going to put a link to this in the description so you can go read this article for yourself. You can dig further if you want to. But he says this new plan describes an Orwellian, globalist-run unified ledger that records the ownership of all assets, checking accounts, real estate, bonds, stocks, etc., on a centralized exchange run by globalists. All assets will be tokenized, a process that the BIS describes as recording claims on financial or real assets that exist on a traditional ledger on a programmable platform. So, guys, what are they talking about here? They're talking about, basically, think of Bitcoin. If you understand Bitcoin and you understand this distributed ledger technology, there's one open ledger for all the world to see. You don't necessarily have names attached to it. You have account numbers, but it's decentralized. It exists on multiple platforms and places all across the world. So it can't necessarily, in theory, be manipulated. But that's the Bitcoin platform. Here we're talking about a centralized programmable platform where they would do the same thing. But they're not just talking about taking currency and digitizing it. They want to digitize things like your home. And they'll roll this out and they'll say, well, what we're going to do is, you won't have to have a title search. It'll make it so much more efficient because here we're going to use blockchain technology to know specifically who owns that home, that piece of real estate, whether there's any additional claims on it or not. And then we'll know, without a doubt, the whole world will know, any financial institutions that are looking to make a loan against that as collateral will know if these other claims exist without some expensive title search because it's right there on the unified ledger. So not only will they know what you're buying and selling with their central bank digital currency, but they also want to know what you own, what are your assets, what are your liabilities. They want to know every single thing about you. They want to know who owns every single share of stock, who owns every bond, anything that they can control. They want to know who owns that. And of course, once they roll out the central bank digital currency, they'll be able to do that against other things as well. So if you wanted to buy a gold coin, well, they would know that you bought that gold coin. That would be on their unified ledger as well. And so in order to get rid of it, you wouldn't be able to even trade it with someone else. Think about that. You wouldn't even be able to barter that gold coin with someone else because they would be able to claim, well, where is it? You got rid of it. We want to see it, right? You don't have it anymore. Did you pay capital gains taxes on that? Right? So you can see where all of this goes. They really encapsulate you into this prison when they roll this stuff out. And so they want to track not just the currency you're using, but also all of your assets. And they want to do this on a programmable platform, meaning we've talked about this in the past. They can change the rules at any time, and they can determine things like, oh, well, you know, you really shouldn't have posted what you did on Facebook last week. That goes against the official government narrative. So in the past, we just took that down and put up a government fact check. But now you're on probation. So your central bank digital currency doesn't work outside of a 1 mile radius of your home. So effectively placing you under house arrest. Or they can do whatever they want. It's programmable. They can do whatever they want. And of course, all of this is being proposed by the Bank of International Settlements. And we've gone over in the past, they have another policy they're pushing called Project Icebreaker. And Project Icebreaker is this idea that there would be a global infrastructure put in place for all central bank digital currencies. So that means that you may not have one central bank digital currency that the whole world uses. You might have a Chinese central bank digital currency, a United States one, a Japanese one, Canadian one in the EU, one in Russia, one in India, etc. Each central bank rolls out their own central bank digital currency. But in order to trade in cross-border payments, and in order to handle the exchange rate between those, if say you're in another country from where I am and we want to trade with each other, well, we have to find a way that I can accept your central bank digital currency and convert it into mine and vice versa. So the Bank of International Settlements, well, they want to be the clearinghouse for that transaction and set up this infrastructure where they're the one in charge of all of that, which of course would come to mean they determine the infrastructure, how those central bank digital currencies are set up to begin with, at least to a large degree. And then they would determine, it seems, well, who can buy or sell. You're cut off from making those international transactions, or we're going to reprogram yours in whatever way we see fit. It will give them immense control, and it'll essentially create a global system of control similar to what we read about in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verses 16 through 17, this mark of the beast system. Again, the mark of the beast appears at the midpoint of the tribulation. What we're seeing now is not the mark of the beast, but I believe it sets the stage for, it builds the infrastructure for, and sets the platform for that mark of the beast system. And if there's any doubt when you think, oh, because they came out, the European Commission said, don't worry, this is not an Orwellian program. And Christine Lagarde, she's president of the European Central Bank, she said, central banks don't want to have programmable CBDCs. It's not even on our radar. We wouldn't do that, right? Trust us, we wouldn't do that. But then we see things like this. So this is from Wall Street Silver. They tweeted, blockchain developer Pedro Magalhães claims that he has successfully reverse engineered the source code of Brazil's pilot central bank digital currency. He revealed the existence of functions that empower a central authority to freeze funds or reduce balances. So we don't intend to have that programmability in there. They would say, it's not our intention, or we're not even thinking about that. And they'll give people these reassurances, and they may actually roll out central bank digital currencies that aren't programmable to start with, but then they'll get rid of the cash option. Once you're in the system, then they'll roll out the programmable. But I think most people will walk right into this trap, even if it is programmable, because they don't understand what's coming, how quickly it's coming, and what nefarious plans are in place right now. So no doubt about it, just like this article from Brazil tells us, they have programmable features to be able to freeze this stuff. Why would they do all of this? Why, it's obvious why they want the control. But how are they planning to implement all of this? And I think we've been witnessing some of the stage setting for how they plan to get this to a crisis point where they'll roll it out. And to find out what they're doing, let's check out this John Rabino Substack article. Again, all of these articles, I'll put links in the description to this video. So if you want to go read the whole article, look at them for yourselves, feel free to do so. But he says, they're coming for your bank account. And then he says, here's what we can do to prepare. And again, go check out his link. I'm not going to go over all of his preparations. So I'm just going to read a little bit about this because I think this really is insightful. It says, 2 trends are converging to end the era of local bank accounts. Number 1, central banks are conspiring to force us out of traditional savings and checking accounts and into central bank digital currencies. So the goal for the central banks is to get us into these central bank digital currencies. In order to do that, they need to eliminate traditional savings and checking accounts. So we're going to talk about what they're doing to make that happen in just a moment. And of course, he reveals in point 2 the initial stages of how they're making that happen. He says, number 2, deposits are now fleeing local and regional banks because of an inverted yield curve that makes it impossible for those banks to pay competitive interest rates on deposits. Put another way, there's a shortage of currency in the banking system, which is an existential threat for a lot of banks. This isn't just the US, this is happening all around the Western fiat world. So what's he talking about here? Well, you can get, if you're in the United States, the money market accounts are paying you 5% and your checking account is paying you maybe 0.1%, if even that. And so it sets this incentive for people to move their money out of checking and savings account into money market accounts, which are not treated as part of the bank's assets for regulatory purposes, to put it simply. So then they have to raise additional cash to make up for that shortfall. So it changes how they're regulated, to put it another way. So it says, combine those 2 things, and the result is a looming bank crisis that creates the perfect pretext for the forced introduction of central bank digital currencies. It will begin with more Silicon Valley bank-style failures, leading the government to, quote, protect the banks by limiting depositors' ability to pull their currency out. This, in turn, will make banks even less attractive to depositors, leading to an acceleration of withdrawals and a surge in bank failures, which gives the Fed its pretext. Its pretext for what? Pushing you into central bank digital currencies. And we're going to talk about why in just a second. We're going to look at the current state of the banking system. Again, the bank runs were all the big news back in March. Don't hear much about the banking system anymore, but it's in a precarious situation. We're going to look at why in just a second. And then we're going to talk about what the next steps are, what's likely to happen. So first, let's look at where the banking system is right now and why. So let's take a look at this right here. We've looked at this chart numerous times over the past, 8-9 months when we first pulled it up. This is the federal funds effective rate. So when you hear about, well, the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates, they're talking about the Fed funds rate. And so this is a rate that bleeds over into determining the interest rates that are charged in the economy. And while these rates are not the highest they've ever been by any stretch of the imagination, they were much, much higher 40 years ago than they are now. What is different is the rate of change, the percentage increase year over year in the change in these rates. And we went over in the over these past several months just how amazing a sharp increase this was. And when we were seeing this, I said there's no soft landing for the economy. They're flying the plane into the side of the mountain. And this is the side of the mountain that we're looking at. We're seeing this come down. It's still at elevated rates on multi-decade basis. But the reason is the year-over-year comparison isn't as stark as it was when we were almost at close to 0% rates, up to 5% in the course of a year. So now we're seeing those year-over-year comparisons go down. But along the way, we talked about something is going to break, something's going to break, something's going to break. And we saw that. We saw that with the second, third, and fourth largest bank failures in U.S. history. We saw Silicon Valley Bank, First Republic, and Signature Bank all fail. In terms of asset size, even adjusted for inflation, those three banks, those failures were bigger than all the bank failures of 2008. That should put things in perspective. And we're not even done with the year, guys. There's more to come precisely because of what they have done. So let's take a look at some of these other statistics to see what we have. Here we have, this is Fed remittances to the U.S. Treasury. So for most of all time, there weren't even these plans. They've implemented all of these bailout plans to try to put Band-Aids on the economy following the great financial recession. And without getting into technical terms of what all this means, all you have to do is look at this chart and say, this is broken, right? This is broken. Something bad has just happened. It's broken. The system is broken. Let's look at this right here. Here we have, this is after the failure of those three banks we just discussed. They said, well, let's implement another program. We'll call this one the Bank Term Funding Program, to give loans to troubled banks so that maybe they won't fail, even though a lot of what we just saw in that last chart was a result of what they've been doing to try to keep these banks from failing for the last decade. So does this look like the crisis is solved, guys? We went from 0 on March 8th to, $102 billion has been loaned out to all of these banks. And of course, there's all sorts of studies that show that somewhere between 50% of the banks in the United States are insolvent right now, and they have unrealized losses. Last I heard, I think it was $600 billion in unrealized losses. And all of that could be realized with a bank run, just like we saw back in March. What is all of this doing? Well, we have here bank credit at all commercial banks. This is year-over-year percentage change. Guys, bank credit in this debt-based fiat system we have is the lifeblood of the economy. And as you can see, the only time on this chart going back almost 50 years that we've seen it go negative was following the great financial crisis, where we're about to go negative here, and we had this sharp drop downward that is the result of those interest rates just skyrocketing from near zero levels up to over 5%. And we're starting to see the impact of that hit, because it typically takes 12 to 18 months, somewhere in that time frame, for those changes in the Fed funds rate to actually have an impact in the real world economy. So we're just realizing the initial impact of those Fed rate increases. It's going to get worse from here. So let's go back and look at John Rabino's article where he's talking about this is what they're going to do. And then he goes on to provide, again, I'll put this link on here and you can read more of this, but he cites a number of people who talk about they're going to try to freeze or gate these deposits within the banking system when the next run occurs, meaning they will try to prevent you from taking currency out, taking the cash out. So you will probably, in all likelihood, be able to transfer money from Bank A to Bank B, maybe not all of your account funds, right? Because they won't want Bank A to fail, but you'll be able to pay a bill electronically. You'll be able to write a check because the funds will be leaving your bank financial institution going to another one and vice versa. But they want to prevent these bank runs and prevent people from withdrawing cash. And they talk within this article, he talks about a possible 180-day freeze on those accounts, gating of those accounts. And that includes a whole host of financial accounts to try to prevent a failure of the banking system. Now, again, we've talked about this very well could be coming in the near future. We talked about in all likelihood, you wake up one Monday morning and there will be a banking holiday, or in this case, in a banking holiday, the bank would be closed for a couple of weeks. Maybe they won't go to those lengths. Maybe it'll simply be, well, you can't withdraw cash today temporarily. Right? We have a temporary government program to prevent you from drawing cash because of this crisis. But then temporary becomes permanent. It just remains in place. Again, Nixon closed the gold window temporarily back in 1971. Still not back open, right? So they'll institute some sort of temporary fix that'll be permanent. That may be one way that they prevent you from using cash. You'll be able to deposit the cash, but you won't be able to withdraw the cash. You won't be able to empty an entire bank account at, say, a small regional bank and take it to put it all with JP Morgan because you think they're less likely to fail. They'll simply gate it all in and then just bail out whoever they have to, or they'll let it collapse and they'll say, don't worry, and we've talked about this before, the Fed is the ultimate bank that cannot fail, right? The Fed can't fail. Again, let's look at this chart right here. I mean, that's a bank failure right there. That's the Fed. That's the Fed's balance sheet effectively. Or not really their balance sheet, but that gives you insight into what the Fed, their prospects look like as a bank, but they haven't failed because they can simply print more currency. So why shouldn't everyone just have their account directly with the Federal Reserve? And then they'll effectively walk everybody into that central bank digital currency system. And then they'll roll out everything else, which means the tokenization, not just of your currency, but of your assets, your real estate, your stock, your bonds, anything you buy with that central bank digital currency. Well, if you sell it, if it's something that can be sold, there better be a record of that transaction within the system. If they find out you don't have it, where'd it go? Why didn't you pay your taxes on that? Right? So they're going to make it as hard as they can for anyone to be outside of the system. And all of this leads, guys, to the world of Revelation 13, where we read about a global government and we read about one man having control over everyone on earth, their ability to buy and sell. Again, none of that's coming next month, but we're seeing the pieces put in place right now that will enable that to happen in the near future. And so that should wake us up, if we're not already awake, Jesus said, stay awake, be alert, watch. He said, when you see all these things begin to happen, look up, your salvation draws near. Guys, all of this, I believe, is a sign that we're drawing closer and closer to the tribulation period that Jesus warned about, that the prophets warned about. And the end of that tribulation period, which Jesus said would be a time of worse on earth than any, a time of greater anguish than any since nations first came into existence. And that's really sobering to think about. But that time period, as bad as it will be, will end with the return of Jesus Christ to rule over this earth. And guys, I believe before that period even begins, before that 7-year tribulation period, Jesus will return for the church in what's called the rapture. So I don't plan to be here for that. If you are a believer and follower of Jesus Christ, if you were born again, I don't believe you will be here for that either. So guys, that shows the importance of knowing him, of having a relationship with Jesus Christ, knowing that while we were still sinners, he obediently went to the cross and spilled his blood, died for our sins, so that we could be reconciled with God and have eternal life. That's the good news we should be preaching to everyone. So guys, what do you think? Leave your comments below. Again, I think it's very clear that all of this is being orchestrated. They have a plan to get you, to come after me, you, all of us, anyone that enjoys freedom, anyone who is self-reliant, who is outside of their control. They want to bring us into their control. And there's this whole plan in place. And I believe what they've been doing, raising rates so intently, trying to push for things to break, is part of that plan to create a financial crisis so that they can then go in and claim to be the solution to that crisis by implementing this system of control, a global system of control. Time will tell. What do you think? Do you agree with that or not? What do you think of all of these things that you see coming at us? I think, again, it's never been more important to know Jesus, to invest in your relationship with him. We should be living life knowing that he could return at any moment. And so whatever God has told you to do with your life, whatever you know you're supposed to be doing with your life, make sure that you're doing that right now, because who knows how much time we have left to do the work that Jesus has given us. So guys, leave your comments below. Make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe button. When you do that, more and more people hear this video, see this video, and may become followers of Jesus Christ, have their lives changed. So make sure you do that, and God willing, I will see you on Wednesday. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.